Hello everybody and welcome to the YouTube character profile upload for Jerry Booth, who was a builder's apprentice. He first came into Coronation Street in the 1960s, and we have got a new builder's apprentice on the street as we are recording this week in March 2021. Paul has been taken on by Ed, so we thought, yeah, why not take a look back at a classic Corrie builder who, when we did this character profile in episode 352 of the podcast, we didn't know anything about other than what we'd read, did we?
No, we had not seen him in action at all, and so this was all us just talking about things that we had read on Corriepedia, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. And I just have to apologise in advance for the sounds of me eating a sausage. I did not realise that they were being picked up by the microphone at the time, and the howling wind because we had a hole in our patio door, which is still there.
The 100 episodes of the podcast later, we've still got that hole in the patio door. Don't rob us. Right, here is our character profile of Jerry Booth. Right, we're going to do a classic character profile today of... I know. A classic character profile.
I don't know what that is.
It's when we take a look back at a character of Corrie past and see what they got up to. And this one is a... This was a character that I didn't know anything about. We're talking about Jerry Booth today, who was in 652 episodes of Coronation Street back in the day, and it's a name that I've heard come up a lot, and we've probably mentioned him in other classic character profiles. But before.
But who is he?
Well, this is what we're going to find out.
And why?
He may not be a massively memorable character to some, but no. Here's going to be a bit of a history lesson. So
all right,
you didn't know about Jerry. Everyone. Soon you will. I want to say thank you to Corriepedia as well for this one as well, because when I spoke to John last year, if you remember though, about this time last year, we did an interview with him, and I said I was talking to him about some of the characters that we haven't profiled on the podcast yet, and sometimes the Corriepedia page on certain characters can be a little bit sparse or unfinished, and I mentioned Jerry Booth as being one that'd be a really good character to talk about, but the page isn't completely done, and somebody at Corriepedia went off and updated the page just for us. So this is all in thanks to them. And there's a couple of other characters as well. It's the same thing, but Gemma, I'll leave it to you to do the statistics of Jerry Booth.
I just took a big bite of sausage.
Okay, I will do it then. He was born... No, I didn't realise that when you started. 2nd of August 1941. He died on the 10th of November 1975. His parents were Ernest and Nellie Booth. He married Myra Dickinson, and he had... that was in 1963. In 64, they had a daughter together. Unnamed. We'll find out why later, I guess. He first appeared on Coronation Street on the 23rd of July 1962, so it was in the first year and a half he was in the programme, and he made his final appearance on the 29th of October 1975. As I said before, he had 652 episodes to his name when the character and the actor passed away, and he was played by Graham Haberfield. Now, there's a bit of an interesting story about how they... Well, it's not that interesting, really. Let's start that again. There is a story about how Coronation Street got Graham on board onto the show. There was an equity actors strike in the early 1960s when a load of people on Coronation Street and other programmes said, we're not doing any work until you give us more money, basically. And Coronation Street was down to about 12 characters or so for a good 6 months or more, I think. I can't remember. And after the...
Were they all scabs?
They were total scabs. And after the strike was over, the only new character of the year that was brought in was Jerry Booth. And he was the first character that was cast by Harry Kershaw, that some of you should know the name of as an ex-Corrie producer. So it was played by Graham Haberfield. His first job after finishing at Bristol Old Vic Drama School was on Coronation Street, so he landed on his feet there, you'd say. Kershaw wanted a character who was shy, gauche, but fanatically conscientious, and Haberfield was apparently the perfect fit out of the three candidates who applied for it. He said in an old interview with the TV Times, I couldn't believe my luck when I heard I got the part. I didn't sleep for several nights after hearing the news. So, good for him.
That's nice.
Nice to know. he was in and out of the programme a little bit during his time. In 1964, he took a voluntary break, and then again in 1968. Now, this was also a year when apparently there was a story that was suggested for him that he was going to be gay, or he was going to realise he was gay, or what, I don't know. But I mean, that was quickly shot down. I think that was a little bit too progressive for Coronation Street in the 60s. Although he wanted to leave in 1968,
who shot it down?
Just the
who suggested it?
I don't know. Storyliners or producers or what, but it was decided that they weren't going to go there. That wasn't why he took the break. He wanted to just try out different roles for a bit. And he came back to Corrie in 1971, and then very tragically in 1975, Graham Haberfield had a heart attack just out of nowhere. He was only 34.
Oh God, don't tell me this.
Well, I'm telling you, this is what happened.
I shouldn't have had that sausage.
So let's have a look back at.
God, that's making me paranoid.
Well, you've made it past
34. We're all living on borrowed
I
time,
know.
people.
He was born in 1941 on Viaduct Street. He left school at 14 and he became an apprentice joiner to Joe White, who was a builder, at his yard on Bessie Street.
Right.
So, 1962, I'd say that was when he first came into the programme, and he was kind of brought in when this builder Joe died, and his wife, Mrs. White, had to make Jerry redundant. So, Len Fairclough, who was very newly self-employed at the time, hired Jerry immediately, because Len had also been an apprentice of Joe's, back in the day. Jerry became friends with Dennis Tanner, with Jed Stone, with Sheila Birtles, Doreen Lostock, all the old guard. They did used to tease him a little bit for being a bit shy and naive. He kind of reminds me, from the little research that I've done, a little bit of like Tyrone as being a kind of a nice guy, and I think Tyrone was a little bit naive at the beginning as well. Mm-hmm. Or Ashley Peacock, that kind of person. Although to look at him, you wouldn't think that, would you? We even had to do a little Google search of Jerry Booth before we started recording this bit, because I couldn't remember what he looked like.
Why should we know what they look like?
Because we are.
What's
experts.
wrong with looking at what? How do you find something out?
You look it up on Google.
Exactly.
At the end of 1962, or towards the end of 1962, he had a date with Sheila, which went a bit wrong when their tandem ended up at a ditch, and I think we talked about that when we did Sheila Birtles' character profile last year as well. Can I coin a phrase for all the girlfriends of Joe Booth's? They were his booth babes. That's what they'd be called these days. 63, Gemma.
He dates Rita Spears.
Another booth babe. I don't know who that is.
Tried to make Sheila jealous, but it turns out she's only 14. Oh,
whoops.
Warp. Sheila, 2 times Jerry with Neil Crossley, then dumps Jerry when he gets annoyed and thumps
Neil Crossley.
After Sheila's attempted suicide. That sort of escalated, didn't it?
Well, Sheila Birtles was the one who they were going to have her kill herself, but then they chickened out of that at the last minute as well. Do you remember? And then they had somebody rescue her.
Yeah.
So they were still going to get rid of the character. So she left Weatherfield, and and then as you were about to say,
departed from Weatherfield. Jerry goes out with Myra Dickinson on the rebound.
Yes.
It's never any good when I read this out because I don't know what I'm saying. Myra is madly in love with him and plans for their future straight away. She considers herself to be engaged, even though they'd only been dating for a week, and he goes along with it. Then he buys number 13 for £525.
£525 to buy number 13 Coronation Street, blimey. We could almost afford that. Depends what time of the month it is, whether I've got that much in my bank account.
Wedding is set for the 19th of October. Myra chooses Dennis as the best man, and Jerry nearly misses the wedding after realising the clock in the hotel he was in had stopped.
1964, Myra turns down a job at the corner shop because Jerry would prefer her to stay at home. He was different values and that back in the 60s.
I wish you preferred me to stay.
Gemma, don't work. Just make my dinner.
Okay.
And that's all you need to do. Clean the house.
That's fine. I'll get my mum round.
Although, to be honest, I think he wishes that he had given her a job allowed her, to have a job to keep her busy, because it turns out she's a compulsive spender. And,
no.
I mean, at least back in these days, you couldn't just get, QVC on, or
Internet shopping.
Yeah, eBay. But whatever they used to do back in 1964 to waste money on probably, like rubber gloves and feather dusters and aprons.
Can I hear something even more annoying about the house price of £525 in 1963?
Yes, I'd love to.
Adjusted for inflation, how much do you think that is now?
Oh, well, I don't know. Go and buy what Claudia was trying to buy the other house for. I'll say £100,000. No,
£10,000. Why?
What?
People wonder why there's a housing crisis. £525 in 1963 money is £10,709.94.
Blimey.
No wonder everybody has got a house in the old days. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's fine. I can't remember where I got to.
She was a compulsive spender.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
buying houses left, right and centre.
Yeah, the house here, else there. She hasn't paid the mortgage on number 13, though, for 2 months. They owe £85.
That's going to be quite a lot of money. Let me just check that out.
How long? So that's going to take them, 7-8 years to pay off the mortgage on this house? Or is it 10 years old?
It's £1,733.
Okay, well, maybe if you told me that you were a compulsive spender and you owed £1,700,
well, that's about right for how much a mortgage would be.
And not
for
only
2
that,
months.
she's pregnant as well.
God damn it!
Also, Jerry gets sacked because there's no new orders coming in at the yard. So they have to give up on that idea. They have to sell up number 13, which is when Stan and Hilda bought it. That was them moving onto the street. So good exchange, really, the Booths for the Ogdens. They move in with Myra's dad. She has a premature birth, Myra does, later in the year. But tragedy, the baby dies after a few weeks.
And they don't name it?
I don't know.
Well, you said
I haven't
she
got
had
a
a
name.
daughter.
Yeah, I haven't got.
That's a bit heartless, isn't it? Like, this one looks weak.
Don't
give it a name.
Yeah, don't give it a name for a couple of weeks. Let's just see what happens.
Sure. Don't waste a good name.
Don't waste the good names. If you have another child, then we can't call her that. Yeah. So Myra ends up. She reacts badly to this, as you would. She stops being affectionate towards Jerry. He tries to say, "Look, let's just fresh start, new home. Let's try and put this behind us as much as we can." But she declines. She's like, "No." So he's like, "Screw you, then. I'm walking out on you," which seems like a bit of a harsh reaction. My baby's just died. My wife's finding it difficult. She doesn't want to jump my bones every time I suggest it. You're dumped, love.
Dumped.
I thought he was supposed to be like shy and naive and nice. I'm not getting that impression from some of these things.
This is the patriarchy, Michael.
1965,
he returned to the street and back to work for Len. He agrees to convert 6 old houses into flats after Len turns it down. And the job is a failure. And Len refuses to have him back at the yard at first. Then he relents, gives him a partnership as a birthday present. And the firm is renamed Fairclough and Booth.
Catchy.
Yeah. There's a bit of... there's differing business practices because Len is a bit of a chancer while Jerry is hardworking and conscientious. But the firm is nevertheless a success, perhaps because they both bring balance to the force.
Sure, that's the case. Following year, this is weird, and I couldn't find out much details about this. But apparently, Dennis... This is what I've written. Okay. Dennis has to apologise when he's caught taking half-naked photos of Jerry for a joke. I can't remember. I think it was some kind of photography project or something, or he says it's a photography project.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But this was 2 years before the proposed homosexuality storyline for Jerry, so I don't know. What else happens? Jerry goes out on a blind date, and it turns out that it's Sheila again.
Hello.
She's back. So he starts divorce proceedings with Myra so he can marry Sheila, but then she bumps into this Neil Crossley again and goes off with
uglies with him.
And she probably does. She goes off with him again. So he's had a bit of bad luck with Sheila and Neil over the years. So he feels pretty depressed about this. So to drown his sorrows, he goes off to a club where he's robbed of £25. £25 gets taken from him, and Gemma has had the 1963 to 2019 conversion.
1966 conversion, Michael.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I am accurate to the nth of a degree. £453.70.
This doesn't make sense, because
criminal's obviously...
if £25 back in that day was worth £463, why was he carrying that much around with him?
Some people, but think about this though. Back in those days, you couldn't have a bank card with you.
Yeah, I
Don't you
suppose.
think about how often when you were a kid, your dad would open his wallet and he'd have loads of money in there? Dads always have loads of cash. It's only us that's weird because we don't have cash.
Yeah.
If a robber tried to
The cash bit
rob
of my
us,
wallet is
they'd
just
be
full of
like,
receipts.
they'd have to run around doing contactless, buying like booze down the Tesco's or something. Right, in 1967, the building firm loses £300. And what's that, Gemma? How much is that in today's money? It's £5,304.62.
Oh.
Because a property deal that Len invested in falls through. And Jerry makes Len give him an equal share. Don't know what that means.
In the Jerry and Booth. No, what's it called? Booth and Fairclough. Fairclough and Booth.
But I thought that they already had a partnership.
But now it's an equal one. Well, Len
Okay.
was the big cheese, wasn't he?
The big cheese.
Well, it's like if it was. I'm getting a kind of Phelan Gary kind of relationship going on here.
All right then. Minnie Caldwell plays Cupid and sets Jerry up on a date with a girl called Sally.
Oh,
but
Booth babe number
unfortunately,
3-4 is this?
her boyfriend turns up, which always puts a downer.
At least he's not. At least she's not 14.
Then he teaches.
He's making better mistakes now, at least.
Yeah, that's all you can hope for, isn't it, in life? To make better and better mistakes. He teaches Emily to swim.
There's a bit of
Because-
trivia. I want
because-
somebody to ask that. Who taught Emily Bishop to swim? Next time we have a Coronation Street quiz.
And
And I was
the,
like,
the
Jerry
follow-up
Booth.
question, why didn't she learn? Answer, she was afraid of water.
I want to see those episodes. Imagine, like, every time it rains, Emily Bishop's like, oh my goodness, no.
Oh, it's going to get on me.
It's all right, Emily, have a glass of water to calm your nerves.
Emily, do you know how much percentage of the human body is water? No, don't tell me.
And now she's going around Peru.
I know.
She has
It's
had
full of
character
water,
growth.
isn't it?
Did they have the rainforest there?
I don't know what you're even referring to.
I'm just saying, back in 1967,
She
Emily
couldn't
was
go
so
and walk.
timid
She
she was
scared of the
water.
one of the most common.
Yeah, things on the planet. And now she's adventuring as a 80-something year old.
No, but she's gone back to she's in England, isn't she? With
Oh yeah, she is.
because
Well, I don't know because
Norris was visiting her.
Norris and her and Frida,
Frida.
but he's had to sell the cabin so they can go off
Oh, that's true.
cruising again.
Emily's such a leach.
I know.
Teach me how to swim. Buy me a trip to Peru.
So 1968 was was another exit year for Jerry. Myra comes back, tries to seduce him into bed, and I found a funny little interview quote with Susan Jameson, who played Myra, and apparently Jerry was allowed to look like he had no clothes on, but she wasn't. And she was she says, I was setting out to get him into bed and I had to wear Wincey pyjamas. I was so furious. So back in the day.
Back in the day, women were never naked.
I suppose that's just the equivalent now of when they have the scenes where a woman's got the covers pulled up to her chin and then the man's there sitting with his pecs out.
I don't understand why everyone finds that strange.
What?
Why would a woman be sitting there with her boobs out? What's the argument? The argument to me is, why is the man there with his chest out? No one wants to see that. Tuck yourself in, lad. You're probably cold, aren't you?
Well, if they've just been getting up to hanky panky, I assume that he's seen her boobs.
Why does she? Yeah, but just you see my boobs. I don't sit around with them hanging out all day. I'm cold.
It's probably even colder up there up north as well, isn't it? Well, she had very...
You men, I've seen your boobs once. Why are you covering them? What the hell?
Well, Myra wouldn't. She had her Wincey pyjamas on, so...
Good for her. Button them up.
She then tried to contest this divorce by saying that they'd been to bed together, but eventually the truth comes out that he didn't
always
fall
does.
for her seductive charms. So we had a bit of a low-key exit at the end of 1968. Dennis Tanner got married to Jenny someone or other that year, and then Jerry
Yes?
just moved off to London.
Oh.
But he was back 3 years later, was he not?
1971, he returned to Weatherfield after losing his job in Birmingham, and he didn't want to tell anyone he was living at a working man's hospice. He was embarrassed. Lucille Hewitt sees him and tells Len he can't give him work, but he does let him rent number 9 for £3 a week.
£3 a week rent, which is
£41 and 31 pence.
Oh, okay, that's reasonable.
But because Jerry's such a stand-up guy, he gives him £4. What's that? You want to know how
Don't
much that
patronise
is?
me, Len.
It's £55.08 a week.
I'd give him £5 a week, then I don't have to worry about finding the change then, or...
I don't think they worried about change for £5 notes back in those days. He gets himself in trouble after knocking Stan's mate Jim out after he makes fun of him for earning money doing housekeeping. It was a different time. He gets a conditional discharge for 12 months.
How much is that in modern day?
That's a year in today's money.
Some things change, some things stay the same. Next year, Stan...
Oh my God, I can see all this money coming up.
I know. I wrote this character profile months and months ago.
Wow,
And I'm just remembering now.
Who would have
I made a
thought
big deal
that the story of Jerry Booth could be told in a series
Not only
of
are we
facts and
educating
figures.
you about Jerry Booth, the character who, if you like me, don't know anything about, you get to learn about
Inflation.
economics and inflation. There are times exactly. Stan resigns from the yard in 1972. So Jerry takes his job, but he kind of resents not being a proper partner in the business anymore, like he was in the days of Fairclough and Booth. And he's also the hardest worker there because as trying to get across that the idea that he was a nice guy and a hard worker and very conscientious and everything, and Stan and Len were a bit, well, Stan definitely a massive lazy slob, and Len bit of a chancer. Ray as well. Ray Langton was working there, and they would often go out like chasing women together and everything. So Jerry was a bit peeved about this. So his next project was to build an 8-foot sailing dinghy called the Shangri-La. So exotic. It ends up being overturned by Stan, though, on its maiden voyage. Boats on Coronation Street.
Well.
No. Later on in the year, he meets Mavis. What was Mavis's maiden name? Gosh, I can't remember at all. That's going to bug me now. Riley. And although they don't get romantically involved, everybody says that they should, because he was kind of a nice, shy, affectionate guy. She, you know what Mavis is like, a lot of very
I don't
shy,
think you should
retiring
encourage two
ditherer.
shy ditherers to get together, because it would just be bad news for everyone.
They go to bed and Mavis is there in her Winsiette pyjamas, and he's there in his button-up pyjamas, like, what do we do now? I don't really know. But instead of going out with Mavis, he dates Norma Ford, whoever that is. It becomes clear soon enough, though, that she would rather be going out with Ken. Who wouldn't?
1972 Ken, quite the catch.
Yeah. Just on classic Coronation Street,
really,
I was watching this morning, he was getting propositioned by Alma.
One thing has not increased in value over the years, and that is Ken Barlow's attractiveness.
It was always a top. Oh, what was that? It was a firework outside.
Right, 1973. Albert Tatlock gets gassed by the electric cooker that Jerry installed.
Yeah. What's so funny about that? That's
Why did you
tragic.
get gassed by an electric cooker?
I don't know. Good point. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe Copedia's wrong, or it's a
apparently
combi.
it says it wasn't Jerry's fault, as he hadn't been told Albert still had the gas meter.
Oh, well, there you go then.
But what does that mean?
Jerry
So he just,
installed
like-
an electric cooker, and he was just like,
He's
so what
like,
this pipe is, just leave
there's
it.
a tube here, I'll just open that. Oh, smells funny. I'm just
well.
going home.
That's because old man smell.
Jerry gives...
Didn't Tyrone also nearly gassed? Didn't he nearly gas Fizz to death with a heater that he installed in our house as well? He's shy of retiring types.
I'm sorry, but you can't... Being gassed to death is the most saddest way to go, because it sounds so funny.
There's going to be listeners who know people who've been gassed to death, Gemma.
I'm really sorry, because it sounds like farting. Like, it's so
So immature.
Oh dear, I'm sorry.
Gemma has
I guess
had
what?
quite a lot of cider throughout the podcast. We'll blame it on that,
And
shall we?
sausages.
Cider and sausages. Lethal combination.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of gas gets produced from that. Jerry gives out. Jerry gives Albert's daughter
Don't mean to carry on.
£5 a week, which is £58.
tried to nearly kill your dad out of £5.
£58.91 a week. You better carry on.
It's funny, but I've got the giggles as well now. So, they go on a walk to smooth things over. Jerry and Albert go on a walk to the Pennines, but they end up squabbling when Albert outpaces him. He's obviously propelled along by the power of old man gas. Now, Len and Ray refuse to pay £204 in VAT, which, as Gemma is pointing to me, is £2,403.48 in modern money. Although you've written 2018, but it's actually 19 now. What happened? I'm lost. They
had to pay.
The plastic company. Let me read this. When Len and Ray refused to pay £204 in VAT after a plastics company who owes them £2,000, which is like £23,500 now, that's a lot to be owed, that goes bust. Jerry uses his life savings to pay it for himself, and I suppose in those days, if you're paying £100 for a house and £4 of rent, you probably can get some life savings quite nicely. Len and Ray bugger off, which leaves Jerry...
You said bugger?
They do one. Leaves Jerry on his own to manage the business. And then when they get back, he's like, right, I've had enough of this, you need to make me a partner. I assume that happens, but I haven't written it.
Okay, I'm sensible now. In 1974, Sheila returns to the area. She's now married to Neil, and Jerry gets drunk and tells everybody how much she means to him, despite the fact that she was getting closer to...
She's getting closer to Mavis.
He's getting closer to Mavis at the time.
Hey Mavis, have you ever been interested in ladies? I don't really know.
She starts dating a Spanish waiter called Carlos, who was played by Malcolm Hebden in Retaliation.
That's Malcolm Hebden's first role on Coronation Street as a Spanish waiter, Carlos, so that's how he came into it.
Couldn't do that now.
What? Oh no, cultural appropriation.
Yeah, exactly. Next.
Oh yes, we are alternating years, aren't we? 1975. This was when Jerry died, sudden heart attack, which they had. It was done very kind of quietly and quickly on the programme because of Graham Haberfield's himself sudden death, which was on the 17th of October. What's the date that I've got down at the top for when Jerry himself died? October. So it was a very quick turnaround. Basically, all that happened.
November was when they said on the show that he died, I think. But
October was when they said on the show that...
No, Haberfield died on the 17th of October.
Oh, yeah.
But it was November, 10th of November.
10th of November. That was when he died on the show. So that was literally within weeks of the actor dying. He was dead on the show, which is very, very different to how they do it these days, isn't it? If you think of characters like Blanche and Betty, Deirdre, there's often quite a good amount of time passes, but his... Haberfield's wife Valerie insisted that Granada kept his final two appearances on the show and just say let's get it over with. So Len Fairclough got a phone call to the police and announced the news to the Rovers. His funeral's the next episode. It was all very low key, out of respect. It's just tragic how this kind of thing can happen.
So
and as
young.
I say, it was only 34.
So
yeah. Although that was the end of Jerry Booth's time on the show, he was also sort of in some of his kind of time off periods involved in Rest Assured, which is a spin-off starring Ray Langton and Jerry Booth, and which is where they are insurance salesmen and premium collectors. And we talked about this in the podcast before because the pilot episode, as I say, it was supposed to be in this series, but they didn't get any further than the pilot episode, which is the one that we saw at the Corrie Fest, if you remember. They unearthed
remember.
It was filmed in 1972, this pilot episode, which was called Lift Off, and it was never shown on
They all ended
TV.
up in a lift, didn't they?
Yeah, it was about...
They all got into a lift to go to some flats or something.
They managed... It was something... Yeah, it was in flats, and it was something to do with they were able to... I think Ray Langton knew a way that you could make the lift stop in between floors, and then you could have your wicked way with any innocent women who were also in the lift with you, or something like that. Anyway, it was never shown on TV, but yeah, we saw it in the 2013. I don't know whether it's on YouTube or anything now.
Probably. Yeah,
it also had Fred Feastin, who was the actor who went on to play Fred G in Coronation Street like 10 years later. I didn't think it was very funny, but I mean, I don't think I'm not a particularly massive fan of comedies of that era anyway. Like,
you've written at the end what the plot was.
Oh yeah, the pair find out how to get themselves stuck in a lift by pressing a certain combination of buttons. I remembered this. Ray plots to get himself stuck with a young lady. In the end, Jerry gets stuck in with her.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I just didn't think it was very funny. It didn't have a laughter track as well. I don't know whether
how are you supposed to know when to laugh?
Well, I know. I need to be told these things. I don't know whether there was supposed to be a laughter track, but they didn't, because it was just a pilot that never went anywhere, whether they never got to it. But I just didn't think it was particularly funny. There was no mention of Coronation Street in it either. But it's a little I don't know what to say.
It's a little thing that happened.
It's a little thing that happened to Jerry Booth, and
I mean, it's good that they obviously had enough faith in the character and the actor to put him in a spin-off, but
it's just funny thinking that they must have had that much. Yet, if you were to get somebody list some Coronation Street characters of the past,
I don't think you get Jerry Booth.
You would not get Jerry Booth. And I wonder, but listening to him, he does sound like kind of an interesting character. He sounds like a nice guy, and I like, the nice guy kind of characters. I've got a lot of time for people like Tyrone and I quite liked Ashley, and I like Billy, and I know that Billy isn't always good. So I think I probably would have liked Jerry Booth. I'm also interested to know like what would have happened with him and Mavis as well, because it seemed like they were setting that up to be some kind of star-crossed lovers, but had Jerry stayed in the show, then we wouldn't have got all the stuff with Mavis and Derek, which was one of my favourite iconic couples from watching some of the older episodes. We'd have never got that, so it's funny thinking like what ifs. But anyway, that is it for Jerry Booth. So if you didn't know about him before, now you do, and also you know how cheap things were in the past.
Yep,
that's it. So,
what? I've got nothing else to say.
You've got nothing else to say. I've got nothing else to say. If anybody listening to this has got anything else to say about Jerry Booth,
write it on a letter.
Write it on a postcard and send it to us. Post it through the little hole in our patio door that we're talking about earlier. Jerry Booth. Right. Tell you what, I love Jerry Booth.
Now I've seen him.
Now we've seen him.
He's like one of my favourite characters.
I don't know whether I'd say that, but
I've got such a soft spot for him.
I've got a real soft spot for him. He was a real revelation from the DVDs. As a character who I don't think has at all gone down as a Corrie classic, at least in the same way as Hildarina, the Snugs trio. There's so many characters. If you think of Corries from the 60s, people don't mention Jerry Booth. No,
and he didn't really have any sort of memorable storylines, I wouldn't say.
No, I mean, I mean, to be honest, if I think Jerry Booth storylines, the thing that springs to mind for me is one that I, when watching it, found a bit dull, which was the thing with Myra.
Yes, him and his wife.
And the catalogues, but just as a lovely guy, he was just great to watch. I do remember he did that speech. Was it
somebody's
Dennis
wedding?
Tanner's wedding, I think. Where he talked about the importance of trust or whatever.
He got drunk, didn't he?
Yeah. And then he kind of disappeared off for a bit.
He's one of these people that's just kind of charming and charismatic in a sort of a very low-key way without sort of being totally in your face and everything. And we sort of talk about how he's similar to Tyrone, and there are quite a few sort of male characters who exude this sort of very relaxed kind of
he was chilled
like a
and
comfort
lovely.
Kind of blanket
kind
of a guy.
I suppose that story wise, in a way, the relationship with Mavis was pretty engaging. I don't know whether it was a story, because it kind of sadly was cut short before it really got going.
I was going to say that was a real tragedy to me, because as we all know, the actor was died unexpectedly, and so the character was no longer in the show. It feels as though they had a lot of plans for him, and I honestly think Coronation Street would have looked very different if Jerry had stayed in the show.
I know, it does make me wonder, like, how did
Mavis
they
and
want to
Derek were-
keep them together? They seem like a really good match. I mean, Mavis and Derek are iconic, but
yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to
Mavis
say.
and Jerry.
What would it have been like?
been.
I don't know. And would they have broken Jerry and Mavis up? I don't know. It's one of those unanswerable questions about Coronation Street. I'm sad that Jerry.
I really
didn't
am,
last
and
very long.
I would recommend, if you haven't seen any of Jerry Booth and old Corrie, if you haven't seen a whole lot of Corrie from the 60s, do keep an eye out for him. Let's keep the memory of Jerry Booth alive, because sadly it's fading by the year, especially after the Jerry Booth YouTube channel got all the videos removed from it.
Yeah. Are we done?
I think we're done. He's just great. Real nice surprise from the 60s. I like characters like that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.